What is up, guys? Thank you so much for joining us for the 49ers game day preview, the 49ers pregame show. My name is Suneil. To the side of me, we have the channel owner himself, Jack Hammer. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great this morning. How you doing, Suneil?
I'm doing well because once again, it is a 49ers Sunday. And for a team that's on a two-game losing streak, Jack, for a team that looks discombobulated, for a team who is going into play, by record at least, the best team in the league, the faithful have a little bit of a pep in their step today because this is the day we get to finally see our number one draft pick, Trey Lance, as the starting quarterback, Jack. How do you feel about how we're going into this Sunday right now?
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun game to watch, regardless of how this thing plays out. I know a lot of people have been calling for this since the 49ers traded up before they as soon as they traded up before they even drafted Trey Lance. They've been calling for whoever the new quarterback's going to be, and
Right.
with Trey Lance, he brings a lot of interesting things to the table, and it'll be fun to watch a guy make his first NFL start.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're gonna definitely get more into that. But Jack, let's start off with who's in and who's out. Tell us the players that are going to be making it onto the field and the players that we know are not going to be active today.
Yeah, well, we already know that George Kittle and Robbie Gould are out. They were put on IR earlier this week. But then, as far as the inactive players for today, you have Jimmy Garoppolo inactive. K'Wan Williams is inactive. The one that's a surprise to me is Juwan Jennings being inactive. Uh, Aaron Banks, again, I think he's been inactive throughout the entire season so far. Ambry Thomas will be inactive again today as well. And Zach Kerr and Buster Screen. Those are your inactive players. So what that means is that you're going to see Travis Benjamin will be back. He was called up from the practice squad, so I expect to see him. Tanner Hudson will be in. He was called up from the practice squad to as a tight end, and then also you have Joey Sly, who will be replacing Robbie Gould as the kicker today.
Right. So let's talk first because I definitely want to talk about Kittle, but one of the biggest issues in last game was the special teams. Obviously, Gold going out last second or last minute really put a lot of pressure on Wisnowski, turning him into a kicker for the first time in his life. That didn't go very well. We had the turnover with Cannon that really changed the momentum of the game as well. So tell us a little bit about the special teams and what changes that you expect to be made in the kicking game and the return game.
Well, as far as the kickers, you have Joey Sly. He was with the Houston Texans earlier in the year. He's going to be handling at least the field goal duties. We'll see if he's the kickoff guy as well. So from a special team standpoint, we'll see him handling the kicking duties. The addition of Benjamin to the active roster today, that tells me that he's going to be returning kicks. So I would expect to not see Trenton Cannon back to returning kickoffs this week, which, based off what we saw last week, is a big positive for this team. He had the one nice kickoff return against Green Bay, but other than that, he's been mediocre at best. So I would expect to see Benjamin, and he might even be returning punts as well. He was definitely a punt returner before, and with Jennings not active, without having Kittle around, I would expect that you're going to see the ball going towards Brandon Ayuk a little bit more often. So maybe they're going to have Benjamin returning punts as well.
Excellent. And then you talked about it, George Kittle being out, being put on IR, so he is going to be missing at least 3 games, which is a huge loss to the 49ers because Kittle obviously isn't only a guy in the pass catching game, but he's also a huge part of the run game with his ability to seal the outside, with his, being probably the best blocker as a tight end. Tell us how you believe the 49ers are going to try to replace him, both personnel wise and what they're going to be doing in the offense to make up for, the big impact that he makes.
Well, Tanner Hudson will be replacing him on the roster for today. Hudson played 15 games, I believe it was, last year with Tampa Bay during their Super Bowl run, including all 4 of the postseason games. So he'll be stepping in there. he was a guy that I know the folks, the fans in Tampa Bay really liked what he brought to the table. I know they were upset when they lost him uh, this during the training camp
Offseason.
period. Yeah, so I know that there's some that he's a pretty good player. Obviously, that's why they picked him up and brought him over when they did. The 49ers did. So it's going to be interesting. The tight end position for the 49ers hasn't been targeted a whole lot anyway. Kittle is a guy who the biggest issue with Kittle not being there, I think, is going to be the run game because of the blocking that he brings. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to replace him. Juszczyk is usually often used as your second tight end anyway. So it's going to be interesting to see how they try to place Kittle in the run game. I would expect to maybe see a little bit more of Charlie Warner this week than we have in the past. And then from the passing game standpoint, I think, and I mentioned this last week, I think that Ross Dwelley is a better receiver than George Kittle. Obviously, he's not the threat after the catch that Kittle is, but just from a receiving standpoint and being able to get open, I think he's a better at that. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in with Trey Lance today.
It's incredible. You just listed off about maybe 4 or 5 players that are needed to replace just what George Kittle does for this offense. So it's definitely going to be, replacement by group. There's not one player that you could bring in to really make the kind of impact that Kittle has, which is why, it's he got paid the way he is. And also, his injury issues really make a big impact for the 49ers as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, I think it's the run game where you might see the biggest issues with that. So the 49ers might be catching a little bit of a break here because Arizona has not been good against the run. So maybe they're going to be able to still push them around a little bit, even with Kittle not on the field.
And a couple of names that you didn't mention that we know are going to be active as well is Elijah Mitchell, as well as Josh Norman.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the impacts that you think that they're going to be making in their first game back for Norman, it was 1 game he missed, but for Mitchell, 2 games. So what kind of impact do you think that they'll be able to make in their first game back off of injury?
Well, I think Mitchell fits in really good with what they're doing now from the running game standpoint. With what we saw in the second half, there was a lot of inside runs out of this with the zone read. A lot of the times that outside run is going to come from the quarterback. So I would expect to see Mitchell have a good influence on this game. He's a guy who's played from the pistol and played from that spot in college. He's a really good between the tackles runner, and if they can just create some seams for him, I think you can see him have a big day today. And I think you're going to see the 49ers want to run the ball anyway. I think they're going to try to keep, if they can, they want to try to keep Trey Lance to 25 attempts or below. It was my guess in this one, and just because of the way that this game's going to unfold, I think they're going to want to try to hold on to the ball and minimize the amount of times he needs to throw.
And something that I tweeted earlier, Jack, that I'm really excited about. This is going to be an all rookie, pretty much backfield with Trey Lance, Elijah Mitchell, and Trey Sermon being the main people in that backfield. Obviously, Juszczyk kind of ruins that, but still, those 3 are going to be playing a big part in the offense today. So let's talk about it. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is inactive for this game. Trey Lance is the starter, and I don't know if you've heard that or anything, Jack, that Trey Lance is going to be the starter, and people are kind of excited about that. But let's talk a little bit about Trey Lance as a starter. This is going to be the first time that he's practiced all week with the ones, which a lot of the faithful thinks is going to make a big difference, or at least believes is going to make a big difference. I know you have, some different thoughts about it, but tell us a little bit about how the addition of Trey Lance as a starter not only changes the offense, but what Kyle Shanahan is going to do with his play calling.
Yeah, and this one's kind of a 2-part answer because in the passing game, I don't think we're going to see a big change in the way that that's addressed. I think you're going to see a lot of the same stuff that the 49ers already run when it comes to the passing game, because that's what Trey Lance did very well at North Dakota State, and that's part of what drew them to him. when he was up there at North Dakota State, yes, they saw him running the same kind of screen packages and route combinations and play actions and those kind of things that they utilize here with the 49ers. Where I think you're going to see the changeup is going to be in the running game. You're going to see a little bit more zone read, that kind of stuff. A little bit more of the quarterback being able to threaten the defense with the running ability too. So that's going to create some openings for the running backs. So I would expect to see passing game similar, running game have some variations and some things that maybe we haven't seen already.
And as far as impact, Jack, who do you think are some of the players on the 49ers team that are going to most benefit from Trey Lance being the starting quarterback? And who are some of the players that you think are going to maybe not have as big of an impact now that Trey Lance is there as a starter?
I think the first two are going to be the running backs, and Sermon and Mitchell. I think they're going to be the two that get the benefit of it, because you saw that a little bit in the second half on Sunday. The running game as a whole didn't increase quite as much, but some of that was because of the runs by the quarterback. But what you did see was you saw Sermon go from averaging, the running backs went from averaging 4.7 yards in the first half to 5 yards per carry in the second half. So I think that Sermon and Mitchell and even Patrick, if he gets in there, those three are going to benefit from having Trey Lance in the backfield, because he's going to help maybe, hold the linebackers at times or hold defensive ends from being able to crash down on certain plays, depending on what the blocking schemes are. Also, I would expect to see Brandon Ayuk maybe have a little bit bigger role in this, because he is a downfield threat, and Lance likes to push the ball down the field a little bit more than Jimmy Garoppolo. So you might see a little bit more of Brandon Ayuk this week down the field than we have so far this season.
And I know, Jack, you've been one of the most level-headed analysts when it comes to Trey Lance, and I admire that about you, because I've been bonkers fandom. But I know that you're not necessarily head over heels in the sense that you think that Trey Lance immediately comes in and makes the 49ers that much better of a team. But talk to us a little bit about what Trey Lance needs to do to help make this 49ers team better.
The main thing he needs to do is a couple of things. I mean, the first one is he needs to hold on to the football. He needs to make sure that he doesn't turn it over. He was really good at that in college. He didn't throw any interceptions in 2019, and he had one in 2020. So he just needs to make sure that he holds on to the football. That's priority number one for him. And priority number two is he needs to be able to hit the throws that are there when they present himself. He needs to be able to pull the trigger on that and get rid of the ball. We know it's not going to be timed up maybe quite as well as what Jimmy Garoppolo brings to them, right? Because Garoppolo is usually really good with getting the ball out of his hands quick. We're not going to see that out of Trey Lance as much, but we need to see him be able to hit the throws when they do present themselves. And if he can do that today, I think the 49ers are going to have a really good chance to win.
And what does he need to stay away from that you've seen on his tape, and some of the reasons why, you kind of feel that Garoppolo is a better, player than him for the 49ers at this time? What are some of the mistakes that you've seen him do in the past that he really needs to stay away from in this game?
The biggest thing is he needs to take the throws when they're there. There were, even on Sunday, we didn't really see him throw the ball much weeks 1 through 3, right? Mm-hmm. When he was called in the game, it was pretty much run, except for a couple of times when they said you're going to throw it, and they kind of schemed it up and said this is where you're going with the ball and so on, and made it easy for him. So last week was the first time we really got to see him in a live game against NFL competition. Get rid of the preseason, forget about that for a minute, because those guys, even though that's NFL, it's not the same as what we're dealing with now, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just when the guy is open, whether it's a check down or whatever, instead of taking off running, deliver the ball to him. Get the ball to your hands. You don't need to be the guy that I don't want to see Trey Lance running around with the football if he has somebody that's open that he could get the ball to. I want to see him deliver the ball. I want him to get the ball to Kyle Juszczyk and let Juszczyk be the guy that's running around getting hit, or Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk or what have you. That's what I think he needs to show improvement on today.
And I really would like to see Kyle Shanahan's play calling early, because I think, like you mentioned, establishing the run is going to be extremely important, because because that helps, I think, the play action plays. And I expect if the running game can get off the way that we expect it to get off, those play action plays are going to be a lot deeper than what we see Jimmy Garoppolo do with his play action plays. Would you agree?
I do agree. I do think that there's going to be some chances for him to go down the field with the ball like he wants to do. Uh, and that's one of the main differences. And so if he's able to make those plays, if they present themselves and they're open and he's able to hit them, then that's what you want to see from him.
Cool. Before we move on to the next question, Jack, you did have a super chat come in. Just
Yeah.
wanted to shout out Wanda Brown. I don't. There it is. I don't know what a
Yep.
super sticker is, Wanda, but I know Jack and appreciates it. Thank you so much for joining the show today. So,
Yeah.
Jack,
I want to say thank you to Wanda too. Wanda's great. She's always on these shows and whatnot. Grant and I had a good time with her on Tuesday during our show. She didn't like some of the take that I had when I was on with Grant, and we kind of joked around a little bit about that. But Wanda's great, and she's always in here on these shows, so appreciate it.
beautiful, beautiful. So Jack, let's be honest about putting this game into perspective. Right now, Arizona is the hottest team in the NFL. They're the only undefeated team left in the NFL. Their offense is humming. Kyler Murray is looking like the favorite for MVP at this moment. They have probably, in my eyes, the best receiver in the game in DeAndre Hopkins. AJ Green is starting to show flashes of the old AJ Green with his ability to catch the ball and score touchdowns. And the 49ers just lost to a Seattle team that doesn't look very good. And Arizona, on the opposite hand, just demolished a Rams team that looked like the Super Bowl favorites right after they beat, Tampa Bay. So on paper, this doesn't look like a good game for the 49ers, especially with the rookie quarterback starting and just the discombobulation of the 49ers at this point. Do the 49ers have a path to victory in this game, Jack? And if so, what are those keys that they need to do to be able to beat, what some are saying are the best team in the NFL right now?
Yeah, I do think they have a path to victory, and I tweeted that out this morning. I think that the thing for them, if they're going to win this game, that they have to not have turn the ball over. I really feel like if the 49ers go into this game and they don't turn the ball over, they're going to win. And I know that sounds really simplistic, but when you look at the way that Arizona's won and played this year, they've dominated the turnover portion. The only game that they did not force a turnover was against Minnesota in week 2. And Minnesota, if the field goal goes through the uprights at the end of the game, wins. I think I'd say the 49ers are pretty much on par with what Arizona brings to the table, or excuse me, Minnesota brings to the table. And so if the 49ers can just run the ball, burn the clock, hold on to it, not turn it over, play defense the way we've seen them play for the majority of this season, I think they're going to be able to come out with a win. It's not going to be a blowout win, but I think they can pull this out.
Now let's talk a little bit about that defense, because I think that's going to be key. Obviously, Arizona's strength is their offense. They have ridiculous receivers, a decent run game. Chase Edmonds is questionable, so we don't know exactly if he's going to be, playing or not. But obviously, Kyler Murray is a dual threat quarterback that has been the Achilles heel for the 49ers in the past. They did a pretty decent job, I would say, against Russell Wilson. I mean, that offense didn't look like a super offense, even though Seattle does have the pieces to be a super offense. Tell us a little bit about, more specifically, what that defense needs to accomplish through the defensive line and that secondary to match up with what the Arizona Cardinals are capable of doing on offense.
I think it always starts up front, right? With the 49ers and the way that they built this defense. So it's going to start with what they're doing with their defensive line. And really that all comes down to maintaining pass rush lanes. We talked about this last week with Russell Wilson. As long as you maintain your rushing lanes, you're going to be able to kind of pin him in. It doesn't mean, slowing down your rush. You can still go after him. It's just a matter of, if your responsibility is containment for example, that you make sure that you keep that outside leverage and you're constantly, coming at him from that angle, so that if he does move, he needs to move away from you towards where your help is. We saw last week against the Rams a couple of times where the Rams are getting good pressure on him, but they lose their pass rush lanes, and he's able to scramble out and make the plays. Fortunately for the 49ers, for the most part, they've done this really well with Kyler Murray in the 4 games that they've played against him. And so as long as the defense with D'Amico Ryans can kind of keep that same energy that they had with Robert Saleh, I think the front should do a pretty good job there. And then on the back end, this is a little bit more of a little bit different team than the 49ers have faced in the past, because that's a tough group of receivers that they have over there. And it's not just one. I know everybody focuses on DeAndre Hopkins, but you've got DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Jenkins, AJ Green, thank you, not AJ
Christian
Jenkins.
Kirk. Christian Kirk,
Kirk, Rondale Moore, Max Williams, who is the tight end, Chase Edmonds, who's the running back. Those 5 or 6 guys, whatever that number is, that's 6, have averaged between 3.8 and 5 receptions per game so far this year. That's great. Doing a great job of making sure that you're getting everybody around, and that's going to make it really tough for the defense, because you've got to be able to cover at every level of the field, and I think that's part of what's helped them out. And so the 49ers secondary is going to be, definitely having a tough assignment today, but we've seen them do okay. I think that Emmanuel Mosley is going to be fine. It's a matter of how the other guys do, but they seem like they've done pretty well for the most part. They did a pretty good job last week against a couple of really good receivers and so on. So I think they're going to be okay. The key for me is keeping Kyler Murray in the pocket. If you keep Kyler Murray in the pocket, I think you can stop him, because I don't think he can see over you well enough to beat you from the pocket.
There's one more thing that I think is going to be a big key. I know you mentioned turnovers, but Jack, the 49ers are the 4th most in penalty yards of any team in the league right now. And especially with a team like the Arizona Cardinals that are going to be throwing the ball a lot, those pass interference plays are going to be key. And unfortunately, we have seen the 49ers secondary make key penalties that have continued drives and really hurt the team's momentum and their ability to get back into games. Talk a little bit about how the 49ers can mentally be tough in this game, especially when they're maybe a little bit outmatched, at least on paper, by talent. How do they stay away from making those penalties that can really be drive extenders and momentum killers for the team?
Yeah, that's really been a tough part for the 49ers defense this year, because they've given up a lot of first downs on those PIs, and usually it's been on 3rd down. And we saw it really hurt them last week, in the 4th quarter, especially when they were they almost had to stop there, and you get a PI call on Kirkpatrick. So they definitely need to do a much better job of that today. And really, it all goes back again to Murray. I think if you can eliminate the amount of time that the DBs have to be in coverage, I think it kind of will help them from grabbing and that kind of stuff, which will eliminate the pass interference calls. I think you need to try to minimize the amount of time they're in coverage.
And Jack, can you name maybe a couple of players on this defense that you expect or at least need to see have a big game for the 49ers to have a chance in this game?
Well, I think it starts up front. I think that you need to see, Nick Bosa needs to have a big game today. He's had a really good start, but he needs to continue that. He needs to do a really good job of and get a sack, maybe 2. D Ford's got to be able to get a sack or 2. In a lot of ways, I would prefer to not see Ford today if possible. I'd rather see Samson Ebukam, not because I'm expecting Ebukam to be able to beat anybody around the edge like D Ford does, but I do think he's a better job of container. Yeah, I think he's a better container and guy that can chase down the quarterback if he gets outside of him. So I would like to see more of Samson Ebukam today. And one of the bigger one is Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead struggles with maintaining pass rush lanes. We've seen it time and time again where guys get outside of him. That's what we saw happen against the Seattle for the first touchdown of the game. He gets inside, and Wilson runs right around him and scrambles for a touchdown. So I think you need to see. It starts with Bosa in the front line. You definitely need to see Fred Warner step up because the Arizona run game is tough, and so they're much improved from where they've been. So we need to see those linebackers be able to fill the gaps and help out the front, because I don't expect to see the 49ers in their odd front very often because of the offense they're going up against.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back end, it's pretty much it's all hands on deck. You're going to have, I'm pretty sure you're going to have Mosley on one side, and the other side's most likely going to be Josh Norman, and that would put Dante Johnson in the slot. So I think all three of those guys need to do spot on in order to slow them down this week.
I think another big thing is going to be just sound tackling. I think the linebackers are going to have a really big game, because one thing, obviously the Cardinals are really known for their down the field game with Christian Kirk, D-Hop, Green, things like that. But they do throw a lot of screens, Jack. And so the linebackers and the corners and the secondary, making sure that that first person that gets to that receiver, whether that running back in the backfield, makes that tackle. Because I think if the 49ers can put the Cardinals in third and long situations consistently, that's going to help the defensive line and the secondary, as far as giving them the best opportunity to make the game difficult for Kyler Murray. Tell us a little bit about how you see that playing out.
Well, no, that's part of it. That's we kind of talked about that last week, right? With Seattle, it's similar situations where the 49ers need to be able to run these things down, and when they get there, they need to be able to make the tackle. So they did a really good job of turning and running on screens and those kind of things, those outside screens. The linemen did a really good job of chasing those plays down. The secondary and linebackers did a good job of tackling. So we need to see that again. A lot of what we saw last week is, again, the same thing as this week, because you have quarterbacks that are of similar skill sets, and you have another really good wide receiver core. I think this one's better than what you saw out of Seattle, because Seattle, I just, I have a feeling that Lockett was a little bit slowed because of the hip injury.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And, Jack, it's still, early in the season. We're only in week 5. Right. But it seems like we're kind of seeing at least the NFC and even the playoff picture kind of starting to settle down. Right. Especially in this NFC West, we're seeing the Arizona Cardinals kind of separate themselves. We're seeing the Rams, kind of separating themselves. We kind of see what Seattle is going to be, and the rest of the NFC as well. It's hard to say, a week 5 game is a must win. Right? Because especially now with the season being 17 games instead of 16 games, there's still a lot of football to be played. But seeing the way that the 49ers have been through the 4 weeks and really haven't played any kind of brand of consistent football in a full, 4 quarters, and this being an NFC West, division game where the 49ers have already dropped their game in the division against Seattle. Can you put into perspective how big this game is as far as the 49ers' ability to, contend in the NFC West and, obviously the playoff picture as well?
Yeah, this game is, if they don't win today, I think they pretty much almost fall out of contention in the NFC West. They're gonna a loss today puts them 3 games behind in the NFC with 3 losses in the NFC. It's going to put them 3 games behind the Cardinals with, actually 3.5 games behind the Cardinals, because the Cardinals have the tiebreaker advantage. So it's huge. If the 49ers can pull this off, it puts them right back in the division race.
Yeah. And I mean, that's huge, right? Because it seems like the 49ers still haven't played their best football. And for them to be able to really get back into the picture, where it seems like right now they are the 3rd or 4th best team in the division, right? The Rams clearly are playing better than the 49ers. The Arizona Cardinals have clearly been playing better than the 49ers. So for the 49ers to still not have figured it out, withstanding some of the injuries that they're withstanding, to be able to still be competitive and be in that playoff picture, I think you would look at this, and going into the bye week gives you a lot more things to be excited about, versus the flip side. If you lose this game going into the bye week, you're starting to look at it like maybe this is another lost season, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If they lose this one, it's yeah. You're looking at 5 weeks in, like you just said, feeling like it's a lost season and just kind of playing out the string, even though it's that early in the season. It's just kind of the way that it is in the NFL. Uh, just there's so many teams that are around that same 3-2, 2-3 mark at this time. You need to kind of be able to separate yourself, and you need to be on the front side of that instead of at the bottom of it. And a loss today really, for all intents and purposes, puts the 49ers struggling to maybe even get the 7th seed if they're even battling for that at the end of the year.
Right. And look, Jack, 3 weeks ago, we were talking about this stretch with the Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks, and Arizona Cardinals being kind of the make telling us exactly what these 49ers are about.
Yep.
I think most of us were expecting them to go at least 2-1. Now, we're going into this third game, and if at 0-2, and more than likely, like at least on paper, it looks like an 0-3 going through these 3 games. So this is definitely an extremely important game for the 49ers, and I would put a must win for them to be able to at least get some momentum going into the bye week and feeling like, hey, the second half or after the bye week, the next however 11, 12 weeks, they are at least competitive versus once again, maybe missing the playoffs, like you said.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on this one. They definitely need to pull it out. And what we're seeing is a trend with this team when they play tough, really good quarterbacks. They struggle. We saw that, and we've seen that all along, even in their Super Bowl year. Right? They were really lucky in the first half of 2019 that with the quarterback situation that they went up against, there was a lot of not good quarterback play that they were able to kind of feast on and get to that 8-0 record, and then they were kind of back and forth the rest of the way against better quarterbacks. And we're seeing that kind of play out this year. They beat 2 bad quarterbacks to start the season. Now they've lost to 2 good quarterbacks, and now we're going to they're playing against another really good quarterback today. So me saying, me thinking that they have a chance to win might be a little crazy when you think about what I just said with the quarterback situations.
Well, let's get into it, man. So we're almost, I guess, about 25 minutes from kickoff. So let's hear what you believe is going to happen with this game, Jack. What is your prediction for Week 5, San Francisco at Arizona?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one, and I've covered all my bases because on Thursday when I was on the Hammer Nail show with Jesse, I said the 49ers were going to lose. I think it was 27-23, something like that. I think is what I said they were going to do. And then as I was putting my pregame write up together, really kind of digging through the stats and everything, I kind of started to say to myself, there's a lot of things that the 49ers playing into the 49ers' favor with this matchup, and I flipped on that. And so in my write up for my pregame, I have the 49ers winning 27-23. I'm going to stick with that here. I think, again, if with Trey Lance, he didn't turn the ball over often in college, no interceptions, and so on. I think if he can do that today, he's going to be able. They're going to make some plays offensively. The defense is going to probably come up with some plays, and so they're going to come out of this one 27-23 victors and go into the bye week on a high note. And this whole season is going to get flipped on its lid.
Whoo, positive Jack. I love it. I love it. So I've heard there's a lot of things going in favor of the 49ers. The last 2 weeks, actually, Jack, there's a lot of things going for the 49ers against Green Bay. Their offensive line is ravaged. Their cornerback situation is in flux, and the 49ers figured out a way to lose that game. Against Seattle, sure. Tyler Lockett has a hip injury. Seattle's coming off of losses. It's a desperation game for Seattle, and the 49ers have all the momentum going for them. Found a way to lose. So unfortunately for me, till I could see the 49ers play a clean brand of football and be able to play a consistent 4 quarters of football, I can't believe that they're going to be able to beat a quality team, because against every quality team that they've played, they found a way to lose, whether it be timely penalties, whether it be costly interceptions or turnovers, and just the inability to score points when their defense is, playing at a very high level. Trey Lance being in there, I do believe gives them a better chance, just because it gives an influx of energy. and maybe opens up the playbook a little bit more than you couldn't do with Jimmy. But then that all that momentum, I think, took a downward spiral when you found out George Kittle isn't going to be able to play, which I think is going to be a huge, huge issue for the 49ers. So I'm always Mr. Positive, but I haven't been able to be the last few weeks. I've picked the 49ers to lose the last 2 weeks, and unfortunately, I had been right both times. I have to stay true to what I'm seeing versus what I feel and what I hope for. Jack, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you're right, but I do see the Arizona Cardinals beating the 49ers, and unfortunately, I don't see it being that close. I see it more like a two-score kind of game where the Arizona Cardinals beat the 49ers, maybe like 28-17, something like that. And this ends up becoming a pretty tumultuous bye week. There's going to be a lot of speculation. I think Kyle Shanahan ends up being on the hot seat, and we start seeing maybe the 49ers unravel a little bit, as we've kind of been seeing in the locker room or hearing about in the locker room a little bit. I think that comes to a crescendo at the end of this game going into the bye week, Jack. So that's my prediction. Hopefully I'm wrong. Jack, I want you to be right. I want to be wrong. But that's our show, Jack. Anything else that you wanted to touch on about this game?
Well, I just think that the thing is, and I understand where you're coming from, because you see all the points that Arizona's putting up, and you see, you look at the numbers on their defense and they look really good. The defense, though, is giving up the third most yards per carry in the league. So when I looked at that originally, I was like, is that because they're scoring so many points? And so I went in, I looked at their split stats, and that's not the case. They're averaging 5.1 yards per carry allowed even in the first quarter of games. So I just feel like if the 49ers run game, if the 49ers can run the ball and their offense can play for the most part like they played last week against Seattle, I think they're going to be able to be in a better position. I think they're going to be able to control the ball, control the clock, and all that kind of stuff keeps Arizona's biggest weapon off the field. So if the 49ers just don't turn it over, I think they have a good chance. Plus, when you look at Arizona, everybody gets excited about the amount of sacks that they've had this year. The fact is, they're right now tied for the lowest over the last 3 weeks. They had a great week one. Chandler Jones had 5 sacks in week one. He hasn't had a sack since week one. The Cardinals are averaging 1.3 sacks per game, which is tied with Seattle at the bottom of the league. There's a few other teams that they're tied with there as well. And we saw Seattle not put a lot of pressure on the 49ers until the end of the game when Trey Lance, they knew that he was going to be throwing the ball, and they kind of pinned their ears back, and he had to start moving around. So there's just a lot of things here that, plus the 49ers haven't had the good fortune of playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars yet this year either, as one of their first 4 opponents. So right. There's a lot of things, and I get where you're coming from, and I get where the people that are against this one are coming from, because I'm right there with you. I believe that all those things are true. I'm trying to be the positive one and show how there is a path for the 49ers to win this, and the disparity between these two teams might not be quite as big as what we were thinking back at the beginning of the week.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Jack. The best chance the 49ers have is don't beat themselves. Obviously, turnovers, but more importantly, penalties, right? So that secondary has to play a clean brand of football. I think that they'll be able to minimize and not get burnt. But if they're holding, if they're grabbing, if they're like getting called for pass interferences against, whomever is out there, 2 really good receivers, that's going to be a tough thing to overcome for the 49ers as well.
For sure. It definitely will be. If they don't play clean and they make all the same mistakes that they've been making through the last couple of weeks, for sure, they're not going to win this game.
Got you. Well, Jack, we are almost at kickoff. We got about 20 minutes, so we should let these guys go. Get ready. Get their wings together. Get their beers out. Get their pizza out of the oven or wherever they ordered it from, because this is going to be a very exciting game, regardless of the outcome. Jack, I know you have some things coming up today and later on. Why don't you plug a little bit about what guys could be focused on if they want to see you throughout this game?
Well, during the game, I'll have a live blog over at the Press Democrat. It's 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That's the website. So there'll be a live blog going on over there with kind of my analysis of the game as it's unfolding. So you can follow there. I'll be back on YouTube later on after the game, after I get my write up done, my post game write up, just kind of the good and the bad and the ugly from the game, and then you and I'll be back together tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And guys, while Jack is out there working really hard, writing up his article for the Press Democrat, I will be live on my channel doing the Faithful Call-In Show. So please, if you guys want to sound off about what you thought about the game, head over to my channel, So Real Sports Talk TV, and make sure to call in. It is a chance for you to be the superstar of the show. And then at 6 o'clock, I am taking the other half of Hammer and Nails. Jesse Naylor and I are going to be recapping the game. So there's a lot to pay attention to. Please, please, please be safe. Enjoy the game. And afterwards, come spend it with your boys. Read up at the Press Democrat with Jack. Watch his recap show. Call into the Faithful Show. Come kick it with me and Jesse as well. A lot of fun, Jack. A lot of fun. And I'm hoping your prediction is right, because I don't know if I can handle a 3-game losing streak, even though that's what I'm predicting, my man.
Yeah, I hear that, because then you're going to be, with no game next week, you're sitting on those losses for a month. So
that's it.
100% for sure. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and definitely appreciate it. Go ahead and hit the like button, comment, do all those fun things that you guys do, and make sure you're subscribed to Suneil's channel as well. And we just thank you for joining us today.